So today reading session, we are continuing to read from the book, The Panoramic View of Sahaj Marg, written by Shri Raghavendra Rao. We have come to the end of the book almost. The only last two chapters are there. We'll try to finish these two chapters today. So today we'll be reading the 11th chapter, which is titled The Life of the Preceptor. The life of the preceptor of Sri Ramchandra Mission, following the methods of Sahaj Marg, is primarily the life of an abhyasi with the added duties and responsibilities of divine nature. He takes upon himself the duty of helping his fellow beings on the path of spirituality with the permission of the master. While giving permission, the master infills him with the necessary yogic power and sometimes even connects him with the reservoir of the divine grace. Thus, the preceptor is able to transmit to the abhyasi the required divine impulse or the divine energy without himself being the loser. If any abhyasi starts transmitting to others without the permission from the master, there is every likelihood of the abhyasi getting contaminated with the impurities and is losing the acquired power which would have helped himself to rise to a higher level. The preceptor of Sahaj Marg does not indulge in bartering away his spirituality for material comforts. He is not a professional spiritualist. His spiritual service to his brothers is neither based upon self-aggrandizement nor upon the exploitation of their ignorance for his own selfish ends. He works like the master and is dependent upon and responsible to the master only. He adopts a respectable and socially accepted profession as a householder for his material needs. Personally, he considers himself as one of the abhyasis, or sometimes at the most as the monitor of a class. The idea of his being a guru and the demand for respect and personal service from his brothers never crosses his mind. On the contrary, he worships the hearts of his brothers who are full of the thought of the master. This is important. On the contrary, he worships the hearts of his brothers who are full of the thought of the master. The preceptor of Sahaj Marg is fully aware that his preceptorship is dependent only upon the will of master and never on the desires of the abhyasis. Therefore, he does not care for placating or pleasing the abhyasis with the false show or false promises. He adopts only those methods of training which are permitted by his master for the real spiritual upliftment of his brethren. He never compromises with the false imageries of the abhyasis who go to him for spiritual training. Since he has got no personal motives to be fulfilled by the abhyasis, he gives them spiritual training according to his own methods without caring for their likes and dislikes. The ultimate good of the abhyasis is the uppermost idea in the heart of the preceptor while imparting spiritual training. He does not confuse the good with that which is just pleasant. So far it's okay. Any questions so far, Dharmesh?
No, it's very clear.
Yeah. It is not intended here to describe the life of the preceptor as the ideal life of the perfect man. Nevertheless, the preceptor's life does not point out to the ideal or the goal of human life. The preceptor remains within the circle of human etiquette. He does not usurp the place which justly belongs to the great master, but he is under the commands of the master to work like himself. Here comes the speciality of Sahaj Marg. While imparting spiritual training, the preceptor works with the full authority and power of the master. Therefore, the preceptor of Sahaj Marg can help anybody, however advanced in spirituality, to advance still further through the method of transmission or pranahuti. In fact, any preceptor of Sahaj Marg will feel very happy to do such service to his brothers. The preceptor of Sri Raghavendra Mission prescribes the methods of yogic sadhana for the abhyasis in spirituality. The practices which he prescribes are authoritative and absolutely good. The great master infuses his authority in the person and authorizes him to impart spiritual training through pranahuti or yogic transmission to the aspirants, according to the methods of Sahaj Marg. His sphere of work is limited in the sense that he does not invent new methods of training by himself. He just faithfully translates, so to say, the ideology of the master. There is always the practical aspect in his method of training due to the power of transmission. His methods are not based upon sacred books nor upon fanciful theorizations, but are based solely upon the experiences and intuitions of the perfect master. He knows his limitations fully well and is always dependent upon the master. In a limited sense, a preceptor of Sri Raghavendra Mission is a representative of the master. Therefore, the abhyasis of Sahaj Marg are greatly benefited by his presence among themselves. In the worldly or temporal sense, the abhyasis cannot be always in the physical presence of the master to be blessed by him. The preceptor obviates this difficulty. He is the immediate guide to show the way. He is the monitor of the class. He draws the attention of the master towards his immediate associates. It may be sometimes difficult for an abhyasi to directly draw the help from the master. The preceptor can be approached very easily in such circumstances. Some abhyasis establish a relationship based upon reverence, of course with love, with the master. In such cases, the preceptor comes in handy for more intimate openings of the hearts of the abhyasis. This will help his associates immensely to get rid of their grossness, etc. quickly. The preceptor becomes a sort of nominal mediator between the members and the president of the mission. He introduces new members to the master and organizes training centers under the direct instructions from the president of the mission. If the president of the mission is the supreme head of the organization, preceptor is the head of the training center. Therefore, the preceptor is regarded by the abhyasis as their fellow guide or the companion guide. The idea of himself being a guru never crosses into the heart of the preceptor of Sahaj Marg. The reason is that he knows clearly well who the real guru is. Generally, the gurus of religion fall a prey to pride and self-aggrandizement because they consider themselves omniscient. They demand obedience and service from their disciples and put up a pose of the possessors of the powers of cursing and benediction. The main cause of such attitude of theirs is that they are dependent upon their disciples for even the bare necessities of life, like food and clothing, and also that they are basically lazy, idle, and self-centered. The preceptor of Sahaj Marg has got the attitude of service to his associates and surrender to his master. This saves him from the ill effects of the gurudom. The preceptor of Sahaj Marg, by virtue of the power of transmission, is of real spiritual help and service to his associates. In short, the essential distinction between the traditional types of the gurus and the preceptor of Sahaj Marg is that, whereas the former usurp the place of God to rule over their disciples, the latter takes the position of the servant for the spiritual needs of his associates. The preceptor is the inseparable part of Sri Raghavendra Mission. He is one with it. His identification with the mission is so complete that his entire living is just an activity of Sri Raghavendra Mission. It is a special feature of Sahaj Marg that the master chooses someone and transforms him so quickly and so fully that he unknowingly or unconsciously starts to work as an inalienable part of the mission. No doubt for the preceptor, the change in his own life becomes perceptible after some time, since it gradually emerges to his surface consciousness. Nevertheless, the change is unbelievably sudden due to the powerful transmission of the master. Once again, it should be stressed that the preceptor is not at all conscious of any sense of superiority or false pride and vanity. He loses his individuality to become one with the mission. In fact, the moment he consents to become a willing instrument in the hands of the master, his little self begins to melt away. And the melting is complete when the master starts taking work from him and he begins to work in perfect harmony, conformity with the will of the master, both consciously and unconsciously. The only sacrifice which the preceptor makes is the sacrifice of his selfishness and separatism. In fact, it is no sacrifice at all, but the removal of the obstruction which lies in the path of spiritual progress. On the contrary, the sacrifice is offered by the master of his own life force for making one a preceptor. In Sri Ramchandra mission, there are two classes of preceptors, namely the provisional preceptors and the full-fledged preceptors. The very classes show that the preceptors should not be taken as perfect beings. It has already been explained in the beginning of this chapter that the preceptor is only an abhyasi or a student with an additional responsibility of helping his fellow abhyasis through transmission. Many a time, his associates find the preceptor as one of their own brothers. They do not expect from him the same perfect guidance as from the master because of his closeness and intimacy with them. But the fact is that the abhyasis get the benefit from the preceptor to the same extent as they get from the master. Nevertheless, having regard to the thinking capacities of his associates, the preceptors of Sahaj Marg automatically assumes only those spiritual levels which are just necessary for the abhyasis at different points in their progress. By stressing upon his utter inability to willfully do the materially beneficial miracles to his associates, he cleverly adjusts their outlook in the spiritual field towards proper direction. By leading just an ordinary and simple life of a householder, quite similar to those of his associates, he very beautifully creates immense self-confidence and strong determination in them for the self-realization. By constantly referring to Master, he infuses the abhyasis with the great virtues of renunciation and discrimination. By conducting the satsang regularly, he takes the abhyasis to the finer conditions of spiritual life. The minimum spiritual level of the preceptor of Sri Ramchandra mission is the Brahmanda Mandal, or the universal and cosmic existence. One is permitted to impart spiritual training to others only when he is taken up to that level. Only then he will be able to guide others on the path of spirituality correctly. The Brahmanda Mandal is the purely spiritual sphere or region, which is almost the causal region of his day-to-day ordinary material world of ours. The events which we perceive happening in this world are the final grossest forms of the cases already occurring in the Brahmanda Mandal. Therefore, one who has got his approach up to that world can have control over the circumstances of this world. But this power is normally reserved for only one special personality at a time. The preceptor will unconsciously catch the signs in the Brahmanda Mandal and prepare himself and his associates for the inevitable happenings. This power of the preceptor should not be confused with the power of astrological predictions, which is based upon material observations and probable correlation. The power of the preceptor is based upon his direct contact with the cosmic forces. No doubt the preceptor can exercise his willpower to affect the circumstances by virtue of his connection with the special personality. but he seldom does it by himself because he has surrendered to the master completely and is always waiting for the commands from the master. Whatever power he possesses, the preceptor is absolutely free to use it for the spiritual benefit of his associates in whatever way he feels fit. This freedom is given to him by the master so that the preceptors may discharge his divine duties in this huge workshop of nature promptly. When the preceptor gets sufficient experience in and also gets accustomed to the use of the powers in the spiritual field, the sphere of his activities grows still more. Along with it, his duties and responsibilities too get multiplied. He gets further directions from the master for his work. Apart from his routine duties of imparting spiritual training to his associates, he may take part in some work in the universal scheme of nature in accordance with the will of the special personality. The performance of such duties in the workhouse of nature requires sometimes unlimited power, which nature bestows upon him. These duties also go on increasing with consequent increase in his powers. At such levels, the preceptor's life will be a divinized life, working for the divine purpose alone. He is no longer bound to the earthly pulse. He is now one with that, which is the cause of the entire existence. His thought is now born in the reality itself. By this time, his abhyas or spiritual practice or sadhana is almost over. The worship is dropped off. His tiny creation has vanished. There is nothing left for him to attain. He has, in short, attained the goal of human life. Okay, any questions or anything?
In a simple language, he has described
Yeah.
like one thing, right? It takes the master transforms him so quickly and so
Important point
fully,
he is telling
and it
is that
takes quite a
the
few years
preceptor,
to.
the important thing he's telling is the preceptor is a student or an abhyasi. He's continuing his training, but he takes on the additional responsibility of helping his fellow associates on the path. And for that work, the master infuses him with some power. And as he advances, then when his surrender becomes complete, he becomes an instrument of God himself. So that is the point. Okay, when no questions are there, we'll move to the next chapter, last chapter.
Yeah.
Now we're coming to the last chapter now. It's called the Form of Divinized Life. A bold speculation or a brilliant wishful thinking by some highly intellectual persons has produced a vast literature about the shape of things to come. Religious philosophies, as well as social and political philosophies, have described wonderful dreamlands which are to come in future. Almost all of these utopian fantasies suffer from the serious defect of sounding improbable or at least unrealizable in one's own lifetime. Thus, it is no wonder if some wit has described the interest and belief in such literature as escapism. Therefore, Sahaj Marg asserts that it is possible for every sincere sadhaka to attain the highest ideal or the goal of human life during his present lifetime alone. This should naturally encourage the seekers to take up the practice of the methods as propounded by Sahaj Marg. At this stage, it becomes necessary to observe one who has reached the destination. When one person can attain that condition, there naturally ought to be some more who might have reached that or near about that. Consequently, a form of divinized life can be observed in the lives of such great personalities. Here, a word of caution becomes imperative. The person of realization does not wear a label or carry any insignia to indicate his qualification simply because the general tendency of the ignorant persons is to take the idol for God. In India, we observed the infernal levels to which the ochre-colored robe indicating holiness has been degraded, or silly ornamental caste marks can be taken as another example. A perfectly regulated and well-balanced mind is the first necessity for the divinization of man. In that condition, the life of the individual is one with the universal life. Since the divine principle has descended into the life of the individual, its light helps mankind for its further ascent into the kingdom of God. The nature of light is to dispense darkness, and when all impurities are removed, the light assumes its original nature of colorlessness. This colorlessness may sometimes be mistaken as darkness, but there is a great difference between the darkness due to obstructions and dazzle due to impurities and the pure colorless light. A person who has regained his original state, which is pure primary vibration, the naked thought, is fully aware of the potentialities of thought. Consequently, he utilizes the power of thought most effectively. He knows how the original power has been the latent cause of the entire reality. In fact, he sees little difference between the central thought and the reality. Thus, all his activities descend from the central source into the realm of reality and further on into the spiritual field, which is the immediate causal field of his temporal existence. Such being the case, his thought, word, and deed are in perfect harmony and in conformity with the will of God. All his works become part and parcel of the divine work. His utterances are the same as that of the seer. His thoughts are none but the original vibrations. In short, he is living in the kingdom of God. Such personalities bring into this world the influence of the brighter world with which they are continuously in contact. The major part of the work of such personalities who have evolved to a very high degree of spirituality consists in helping mankind to evolve to nobler levels of being. It is a twofold activity, namely cleaning or purification and attracting towards God or divinization. The detailed description of their activities is likely to confuse ordinary readers for whom it is very difficult to imagine differences in one great harmony. Although the head, the heart, and the belly are at different levels in the human body, yet each is no less significant than the other. Due to their connection with the ultimate principle, they automatically work in perfect harmony and for mutual benefit towards the fulfillment of a purpose apparently unknown to them. Nevertheless, a purpose very pressing indeed. The process of taming the animal in man and the awakening of the sleeping beauty in man are the alienable functions of the form of the divinized life. The moment one comes into contact with such a form, he begins to feel the fragrance of his own inner self. He is drowned in a secret awareness of his own original state. The latent desire to return to his homeland starts to manifest in him. His own life starts to get divinized. The divinization is contagious. It has been the human endeavor to evolve to higher levels of being. In ancient India, the theory of such evolution was well known. They even thought and attempted to reduce the spiritual condition to biological level. But the biological law of the recession of the dormant qualities has frustrated their great experiment. The disciplines necessary to bring out or even maintain the divine light in man could not be maintained biologically due to the simple reason that biological evolution helps in the evolution of the animal, whereas strict disciplines are necessary to maintain the divinized forms. The Varnashrama Dharma, the forms of the caste, and the duties of the individuals deteriorated and almost collapsed. The rites of the four castes have taken up rigid forms. The principles of Ashrama Dharma have gone with the winds. Practice vanished, and only grotesque forms of the theories remained grossed and solidified. Based upon the same theory of evolution, a great yogi of India has attempted to bring down the supramental force to help the evolution of mankind during the first half of the present century. He is talking about Aurobindo actually, but unfortunately his lifespan was too short for the achievement of his aim. In Sahaj Marg, realizing that nothing short of the ultimate consciousness can work flawlessly for the divinization of man, it is utilized. And the divinized form of life is attained through transmission of that ultimate force or consciousness or principle. The divinized form of life is a dynamic movement in the kingdom of God. The governing principle in its comparatively grosser form is pure love, springing up in the region of heart. It is the reflection of the ultimate force. Any other power is inferior and grosser as compared to this force of pure love. Much has been written in praise of jnana or knowledge in the books of philosophy, religious or otherwise. If some have praised yoga of karma or action, some others have advocated the yoga of bhakti or love. Shri Aurobindo has attempted a brilliant synthesis of all these three, that is jnana, karma and bhakti yoga. In Sahaj Marg, however, all these three are grosser activities, simultaneously operating under the great motive force of pure love welling up in the region of heart, which in turn is the grosser reflection of the ultimate force, which is the basis of the divinized form of life. The disciplines necessary to maintain the divinized form of life are automatically inset in the system of Sahaj Marg due to the method of transmission of the ultimate principle. This is the reason why there is no possibility of any curvature to set in there to cause a fall or degradation, as has been the case with all other methods of divine pursuit hitherto followed. The primary cause of degeneration in any system can be traced to the laxity in discipline in the followers. This laxity comes in because all disciplines are external impositions. A system of practice with such an inbuilt mechanism as to automatically introduce the necessary disciplines in the life of the follower was absolutely necessary for the proper evolution of mankind towards the divine life. The method of Sahaj Marg fulfills the need of the day as well as the eternal need of the human heart and soul. The possibility of turning divine is thrown open to every man whosoever desires to adopt the divinized form of life. Thanks to the discovery or the invention of this unique method of spiritual practice, carrying the name of Sahaj Marg. Everyone's life can be immediately divinized if he or she wills and comes into contact with the form of the divinized life. The specialty of this possibility is that it can happen in one's lifetime, even immediately, and there is no need for anybody to wait for ages and lives after lives for the advent of a utopia or a supermental being in the very remote futures, which involves attempting to immortalize one's physical form and body, which again leads one to extremely ridiculous and absurd situation. Increasing complexity appears to be the main feature of biological evolution as expounded by natural sciences of today. Man's innate urge is not to get still more complicated, but to get out of all the complexities and arrive at the simplest state possible. This simplicity is fully realized in the divinized form of life. All complexities in the heart are totally washed out. The knot of heart is rent completely. In the system of Sahaj Marg, even the tendency to develop complexity is rooted out. Man begins to live in the region of ultimate center point, which is ultimate simplicity itself. This is a state of realization which cannot be described in words. The divinized form of life is the clear and perfect ray of the ultimate source or the center. All the activities and movements of such a life are the twinkle or flicker of the original condition. Each movement points to the original and reveals the divine glory. Each activity reminds one of his own real homeland. All the barriers vanish. The purpose of the divine is fully realized in man, and the goal of human life is attained. Total absence of miseries and sufferings and evils and hostile forces is unnatural and improbable. In the divinized form of life, however, they take up a new light. Proper attitudes are automatically developed to face and conquer the hostile forces and to endure and even enjoy the miseries and sufferings. They no longer remain as the problems to be solved, but are seen as the natural consequences of actions and reactions. The play of the divine becomes too obvious to be deceived. The master hand behind the entire phenomena is fully realized. The struggle is no longer a half-blind and groping one, but a purposeful activity for further expansion into the infinite, the kingdom of God. All this is not only the great promise of Sahaj Marg, but also easily and quickly realizable state. People who have taken up this practice of Raja Yoga know this full well, and further researches are going on in this field by those capable of doing so. I hereby invite all the readers to verify this for themselves by taking up the practice. I think that comes to an end of this whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think this will reset our compass, and then it will take us back to the basics, and then it should, this reading should help us to focus on really on our goal. I mean, on the goal which Babuji says is very simple and it can be achieved by simple means. He says the problem is that we are trying to pick up a needle with a crane. We believe it is difficult and consequently make it difficult. But we just trust the master, and he says it is a simple thing which can be achieved by simple and natural practice of meditation. I think we can live up to the promise of the master actually. Yeah, anything anybody wants to comment about this? I think first of all, we should know that the goal is realizable, and within one lifetime itself, we can reach the goal. And in the earlier chapter, he says there is no worship afterward. You don't have to practice then, because then your living itself is a people coming in contact with you will automatically get the light gets infused into their heart, and they will start progressing if they follow the method actually. So as his disciples, we have to quickly reach a stage where we become ourselves light for other people.
Anyone wants to ask anything?
If nothing, then we'll meet next Sunday then.